This just keeps getting better for the Dallas Cowboys as the good news continues to roll in on the Cowboys secondary as one more player could be returning to the field in the very near future. We'll tell you about this player and the latest on the Dallas Cowboys right here on Cowboys Digest. Welcome in, everybody. I'm Jace Andrews. I appreciate you hanging out with us and tuning in to today's show. Sorry about the little bit of a hiatus. I actually moved back to Dallas, so officially now next to the Dallas Cowboys and excited to be pumping out content on the daily from here on out until the end of the regular season and even beyond that. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and stick around for daily coverage now of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, we got a lot of good news that we got to talk about. First, obviously, is a very big win over the Kansas City Chiefs to continue the Cowboys' playoff hunt and kind of defeat the Chiefs' playoff hunt in a lot of different ways. But that obviously was a very huge thing. Couple of things in the game. Obviously, George Pickens played great. The defense continues to shine. I mean, credit to Matt Eberflus. It was a very well-schemed game, in my opinion, against Patrick Mahomes. But obviously, there was a couple injuries. Obviously, wanted to look at Duron Bland. He seems to be okay. And now we continue to look at, okay, well, what is the problem with this team? What is something that, say, they get to the playoffs, what's going to be the thing that holds them back? Basically, in a lot of words, what is their weakness? And in a lot of ways, it's the secondary still. Obviously, Duron Bland has played better since that Arizona game. You've got the return, or rather I should say debut, of Siobhan Revel Jr. He's done a lot of good things. Malik Hooker has been in and out with that back spasm issue, but overall, the secondary continues to get healthier, and it got healthier a day ago. Trevon Diggs is expected to make his return very, very soon as his 21-day practice window opened, or should open this week. Supposedly on Sunday is when it's going to officially open per Coach Schottenheimer. This coming from Patrick Walker yesterday, but obviously, this is good news. A lot of people, if you're following the Dallas Cowboys very closely, you knew this. And Trevon, for as much as people want to talk about him, is still a very good addition to this Dallas Cowboys squad. And the PFF grade, not great, 58.7. And the overall grade, that ranks him 66 out of 110 cornerbacks in the NFL. But still a good addition. Having him and Duron Bland back on the field together is something the Cowboys have had for a very limited amount of time. And yes, for the limited amount of time they were both on the field this year, it didn't go well. But at the same time, you've got a lot of depth now in that piece to where you're not relying so heavily on both Bland and Diggs. But obviously, the cornerback room, you're still like, hey, well, Trevon hasn't been great. That's where even more good news comes in, because we got this report today from both Blogging with the Boys and Cowboys Sports Illustrated saying that a Cowboys third-year quarterback is ready for PUP activation and to, quote, ball out in the secondary. Now, if you don't know who I'm talking about, I wouldn't blame you. It's a guy who last year was on the practice squad for a decent amount of time, ended up coming on, playing with Mike Zimmer's defense, and actually put together a pretty good season. It's Josh Butler. And if you don't remember the name, I'm going to tell you about him here today on the show. He tweeted out this, though, on Thanksgiving, literally right as the game started, saying, quote, "Been a year, been ready since week 6, healthy. I just want to ball out with the game. This team is so fun, trusting in God, but I'm ready. Let's go Cowboys." Now, Butler obviously is somebody the Cowboys would have to kind of have an interesting talk with, and we'll kind of explain what this all means. First of all, here, Josh Sanchez of Dallas Cowboys SI kind of giving us a prerequisite to everything we are about to talk about. Butler began the 2024 season on the practice squad, but was promoted to the active roster on November 18th. He played in 5 games, starting 3 before suffering a torn ACL in Week 13 against the New York Giants. Now, obviously, he started in 3 games because of injuries, but he did really show out in those games that he not only started, but played in. You can obviously see from, well, this stat line alone in the games he started in both the game against Houston, a game against Washington, and to the extent some game against New York where it started to go downhill, obviously. But 12 tackles, 10 of those solo against the Washington Commanders, 34-26 win on that Sunday back on November 24th. And he was a decent part of Mike Zimmer's defense, had five passes defended last season as a whole. And if you are thinking about, well, obviously the Cowboys have had a lot of guys on IR, what's the kind of role with that? He actually can kind of get in here in an interesting way. Now, what exactly do I mean by that? Well, if you don't know what I'm talking about, in theory, you can only bring back so many people off of IR throughout the season. And Joseph Hoyt we're going to kind of talk about it. He had this tweet saying that the Cowboys head coach Brian Schottenheimer was very complimentary of Cowboys cornerback Josh Butler, who was roughly a year out from his torn ACL. Butler recently said he's been healthy. Schotty was honest and said that though the roster management is part of it, the Cowboys can only activate 2 more off IR, which is correct. The Cowboys now only have 2 more activations off IR from here until the end of the season because they've had so many players go on to IR and then having to be activated off. You can assume Trevon will be one of those slots. Well, with Josh Butler, is he worth that second IR slot? Probably not, but he's not technically on the IR. As we go to a quote here from Connor Livesay of Blogging with the Boys, he says, the Cowboys currently have 2 more IR return spots left to use. So bringing back Diggs would mean they would have 1 spot remaining to bring a player back from injured reserve for the rest of the season. However, and I will recommend Hoyt, Joseph Hoyt, the guy who had the tweet before, did come back and make an apology saying this, but Butler is on the PUP list. He is not on the IR. Therefore, he does not count towards the return number. He would just need to be activated to the active roster, end quote. Does this mean the Cowboys are going to activate him? I don't know that it necessarily means they're going to, because he still does require a roster spot, and of the 53-man roster, I'm sure there's somebody that they could take off, but I don't know would they be willing to take that person off for Josh Butler. Now, again, I think that the question is there still in their secondary area, trying to look at what is the best issue, and I think that's kind of a good point made here by Josh Sanchez of Dallas Cowboys SI, saying, quote, there is undeniable depth at defensive tackle, defensive end, at linebacker with the addition of Logan Wilson, and even at safety now that the starters are healthy. But cornerbacks is an area where the team should consider all options, end quote. And he's right. Deron Bland, he's been up and down, had a bad game against the Cardinals, but has looked pretty good since then. Although he did suffer an injury, he looks to be fine for the rest of the season. Obviously, the Kaiir Elam trade just was not a good one whatsoever and kind of derailed pretty quickly, ended up to where he was cut. Now the expectation for Trevon to come back and be the guy that he was in 2021, 2022, it's a lot to put on the weight of a lot of the Cowboys' shoulders. However, I think with Josh Butler, it can really kind of manage the load down the stretch. And while this is a picture from the week prior, we know they beat Kansas City now, the schedule after this still stays true. You have Detroit, Minnesota, Los Angeles, Washington, and New York left. Of those games, Detroit just lost on Thanksgiving as well, as they usually do, to be honest, but they lost to the Packers. Then Minnesota on Sunday, December 14th, a team that is really struggling and could be without their quarterback and McCarthy. I don't really know what they're going to do. Los Angeles is a very good team, but definitely a team that if you're playing the way you've been playing as of late, is a team that you can win against. And then Washington and New York should be relatively, I'm not going to say easy wins because there's never an easy win in the NFL, but I would expect for the Cowboys to win both those games. So we're talking about 5 games left, and I think the Cowboys can go 4-1. Maybe they can go 5-0. I think 4-1 is what they should shoot for, and that would put them in a very good range to make the playoffs and potentially, jump into the playoffs as a hot streak. And so, knowing you're going to get Trevon back, knowing that Josh Butler could be there, and again, if you go back to the tweet here from Joseph Hoyt, which, by the way, again, he did do a thread to this and say that he was wrong, so I'm not going to say that, not trying to come out here and say that Joseph Hoyt was wrong at all. Just wanted to kind of make a story about that. But either way, the point being made in the tweet, though, that was Schottenheimer was complimentary of Josh Butler. A head coach, obviously, is complimentary of all of his players. But for a guy who's on the PUP list, he wasn't necessarily like bargained asked about him. And he came out and said, hey, he's doing well. And when talking about Trevon Diggs. So I think the expectation that he could be signed is actually a pretty good one. And really, in my eyes, could be something that happens maybe in the next couple weeks, depending on what happens with Trevon in his first week back coming up and against the Lions. So that is all we got for you here today on Cowboys Digest. We appreciate you hanging out with us and tuning into today's show. For now, we'll say peace out and see you next time here on Cowboys Digest. Peace out, guys.